Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. We'll call to order the Public Works Committee for this evening. We have a general agenda and a consent agenda as usual. Are there items to remove from the consent agenda?
Mr. Chairman, if there are no items, I move for approval of the consent agenda.
Second.
Is there discussion? Hearing none, those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, no. That passes unanimously. We will move to the general agenda. Item number 1, Greenway and Sidewalk Projects Update. Our Transportation Director, Ms. McCullough.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Thank you very much for having me. Just briefly, in your package, there's some information about the project, just list of project updates, but there have been a few updates since we prepared this memo. And if you like, I'd actually go to the podium so that I can maneuver the
Please do.
pictures. Thank you. The Little Creek Greenway project, the contractor is actually back on site, and what you're looking at are pictures of where the pedestrian bridge was set today. The piles were driven, and they set the bridge in place that goes over the tributary that leads into the Little Creek Greenway.
I didn't wait for that.
So this picture just shows, just demonstrates the bridge being set.
Jenny, where is that actually? One of those we had to do with multiple barrel culverts because of the flooding rules. One of the crossings.
At one of the crossings?
Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
The bridge that I'm referencing is the bridge here. I'm sorry, the bridge here over the Little Creek tributary.
Okay. And the other one over Little Creek itself, is that the one that we had to do with the barrel culverts?
Pardon me?
The bridge over Little Creek proper.
This bridge?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Have they completed that one yet?
No, not to my knowledge. They have not.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
All other items listed are, nothing has significantly changed. The Brushy Fork Greenway, the map revisions, condition letter of map revisions from FEMA is expected by February 2015. The Piedmont Regional Greenway completion date has still not been set. It's still in its preliminary design phases. Muddy Creek Greenway connections. There's a goal to obtain the necessary CLOMA from FEMA by February 2015. On the Kirklees Road sidewalk and pedestrian improvement, the design continues. We have begun the process of purchasing easements that are necessary in order to install the sidewalk project. The completion date here is being shown as November 2014, but that date has been extended some because of the need to purchase the additional easements.
When do you think that date is then?
Unfortunately, right now, I cannot remember that date. I'm thinking it was February 2015, but I can get that information to you.
Yeah.
And then the safe routes to schools. We've listed some roadways that will be completed with safe routes to schools funds. There are 2 additional roadways that we will be bringing to council for inclusion in this project for approval next month.
I had a couple more questions, but are there other council members who have update questions first?
Just a point of clarity, Ms. McCullough. The Safe Routes to Schools grant, we know that's a more or less a program that encourages kids to walk or bicycle to school.
Yes,
Can you tell us just a little bit more about the program in reference to the last bullet point, please?
The Safe Routes to School program and the funds that we received There are federal funds that were allocated to NCDOT in last year's fiscal year, and the intent of the project is to promote safety for children traveling to school, either by foot, walking, or bicycling. We have a pedestrian specialist in our department who also works with an individual in the community, going to the neighborhood schools and having programs to introduce safe bicycling to school, but also determining safe routes that individuals can take to get to school. As far as the sidewalk projects themselves, anything within a 3-mile radius of a school, any projects that we would want to complete within a 3-mile radius of the school would be eligible for those funding. And because the state had additional funds of $500,000, we identified projects that were on the original City Council approved list that fell within those guidelines to complete with those funds.
Thank you.
And I had another inquiry about Brushy Fork. That's been our longest running, I think, delayed project. It looks like we're getting close to the point where we can actually start thinking about building that last segment. What additional design and engineering work will need to be done in addition to the flood study?
I'm sorry, sir, at this time, I can't answer that question. I don't know if
What I understand about it, Mr. Chairman, is that you'd actually, once we get the conditional letter of map revision, have to then formalize the engineering design and submit that to the state for their approval. So then we'd start the design review process.
And are we barred from initiating the design process simultaneously with the flood study?
We would have to have their approval, and it's unlikely they would give it until they've signed off on the flood study.
Can we ask?
Certainly.
Let's check on that.
Sure.
That's taken a ridiculous number of years, and part of the problem is the requirement continually go through sequential studies. If there is any way to double up the study periods, that would make a whole heck of a lot of sense. Thank you. Other questions?
We'll just mention when we were in Raleigh last week, we did brief our elected officials down there on the fact that it is so cumbersome to put in what is in essence a wide sidewalk. And they were receptive, and I think we gave them some written information on that as well.
All right, thank you. Item 2.
Item G2, information on selection process for professional architectural design services for police district offices.
I know this was reviewed by Public Safety Committee yesterday, and the materials are included under C3. I believe, Greg, you're presenting this item?
Certainly, Mr. Chairman. There's a revised memo at your places that gives some additional information. Nothing was incorrect in what we gave to public safety yesterday. It was approved on the consent agenda. However, we thought since it's on general agenda for your committee, we would add some additional information for you. But essentially, we went through the process that we're required to use under the federal laws and state laws, and selected a recommended consultant based upon qualifications. We were fortunate to be able to find a local firm who is partnering with 2 Winston-Salem firms to be the best consultant, and we, if council approves this consultant contract, then, well, actually we have one more step. We have to negotiate a final price with this consultant, and we will bring that to the City Council through the Finance Committee next month for your consideration. But we wanted to brief both the Public Safety Committee and Public Works Committee this month on the process that we used for this consultant selection. Also recall,
This is an information item, then?
this is purely information.
Go ahead.
Also recall that the council asked that we move as expeditiously, quickly as possible on the process for beginning the police district stations, and so this is part of that process.
Mr. Taylor?
Yeah, I definitely think this is something that we should move on very quickly. I think the community needs it, and they're longing for it. My question deals with the fee negotiation phase, Mr. Turner. Based on what I'm seeing, if the city and the design firm aren't able to reach an agreement, then the city will then go with the second most qualified agency, which we don't know who that is. So my question to you would be, who is the second most qualified agency out of the 9?
The team didn't pick a second at the time we reviewed. We were pretty consistent in our opinion that the firm that we selected was the best. If we aren't successful, we would have to reconvene the selection team and pick a second best based upon their proposals. I would tell you that it's very unlikely that we would not successfully negotiate with this consultant, since we've successfully negotiated on several previous contracts, and they are familiar with our contracting requirements and our legal requirements. That was one of the reasons why they did well, because they have experience not only with working in the city, but working with the city's processes.
Yeah, and I'm not questioning the staff's judgment. I was just curious to know who came in second, who came in third, and why. And you don't have to give that information every time. That's what we pay you to do, and we know you do an excellent job. But in this case, just because of the seriousness of it, I'd be curious to know.
Okay.
Thanks.
Thank you. Mr. Montgomery?
Actually, in other architecture firms that submitted, because I'm actually not looking at the item here, because it's some different one, but the how many of those other ones were local? I know it said that we have hearings, but how many others were local?
Two.
Two others were local.
Mm-hmm.
And one thing again is outside of this that I'd ask for, particularly on, and you've given a report before on some of our professional services contracts, but particularly when it comes to the architectural side, the numbers of, let's say maybe for the last 5 years or 10 years, whatever it is, how many times have we gone with the same architectural firms for certain design?
Okay.
Other questions or comments? Hearing none, thank you, Mr. Turner, and we will move then to item 3, please.
Item G3, information on South Fork Critical Improvement Project.
Presenting this item will be Utilities Director Ron Hargrove. Mr. Hargrove.
If I may, I'll speak from up here.
Yes.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman and members of the council.
Good evening.
I'm here to present to you the South Fork Critical Improvements project that's in our capital plan that you see a major capital expense appropriation for this project for this year. Just before I get into the details of it, just a quick overview of the sewer basins that we serve here in Forsyth County. That includes all of the city proper. The Muddy Creek Basin is the largest basin. It's labeled Archie Elledge Basin, but it's the Salem Creek Basin, and then the South Fork Creek Basin is the area that this project speaks to directly. Our overall sewer encompasses 1,725 miles of sewer lines, over 95,000 connections. Just to give you a general overview of what our system is. So how did we kind of get to this point in time? We have a wastewater collection system master plan. It has multiple drivers on why and when you do it. The current plan that dictated the sizing of the piping and the infrastructure that we have was began in 1977. It was a 201 facilities plan that was being developed at the time because there was a lot of federal money to help systems meet the requirements of the Clean Water Act at that time. Winston-Salem, Forsyth County performed one of these back then. So now it's more than 30 years past that point, so the plan is outdated. We've seen system growth in our area over that time. We've got new business initiatives that have gone on throughout that time, that some of those have large water users and actually contribute wastewater into the South Fork Basin. We did not have a hydraulic model at the time. That was all engineering analysis that was performed in the 70s that kind of projected growth and projected what was to come and made those line sizings on conservative engineering principles at the time. We did have industrial customers at the time. Some of those went away, things like Stroh Brewery and Lee Jeans, which was in Union Cross Business Park. They did go away. I think that's one of the reasons we've exceeded our 30-year window on the plan and the pipe sizing that we currently have. Another driver that contributes to a new wastewater master plan is the Clean Water Act, the North Carolina Clean Water Act of 1999, put in place a collection system permitting process where we have to track capacity, and we have an overall goal of having zero sanitary sewer overflows for our system. So with all those drivers, we've had indications that we were at capacity in some areas within the South Fork Basin. We initiated a new master planning effort in 2012. It was for a plan to cover us for the next 30 years. It established performance standards, basically what size pipe do we need to meet our flows for future growth and any storm events up to a certain size storm. We wanted to have a hydraulic model that we could maintain and update that would help us manage our capacity and dictate when pipes may be getting near capacity and need to be evaluated. We also wanted it to tell us what a capital improvement plan was necessary to meet all of those requirements. This is the master plan for the South Fork critical improvement, the South Fork Basin. I'll point out the colors, the dark colors and the orange colors are what is included in that $99 million project that needs to be completed by 2017. It's a 4-year window that we have to get these projects in place before we think we'll be exceeding capacity and having overflows, which we do not want to have. There are about 16 projects, 6 pipeline projects, 4 lift station projects. There are 5 inspection type projects, which means we go in, look inside the pipes, or we do smoke testing to try and identify sources of inflow and infiltration. And there's 1 major wastewater treatment project included in a total project cost of $115 million over that 4-year window. There are consequences if we choose to delay it or not move forward with the project. We will see sanitary sewer overflows. That will generate notices of violations, potential civil penalties. The regulatory bodies can issue consent orders that require us to take action to make these projects happen. There could be moratoriums on allowing sewer connections, and that would include sewer connections for large users. Our reputation, we want to do things the right way. That image gets hit if we allow that to happen, and we subject ourselves to losing our delegated self-permitting authority. We did look at, speaking of the large wastewater project, we did look at that one specifically for alternatives. The alternatives to not building that large pump station would include building a new wastewater plant somewhere in the eastern side of the county, or expanding one of the 2 existing plants, which we, from our consultants' recommendation, would be far exceed the capital dollars we're investing in that pump station at the Muddy Creek plant. Speaking of the Muddy Creek plant, this is an aerial view of it. The current plant is basically in this red box here. The areas in blue would be the new additions. The driver behind this project is once we expand the capacity of the pipes in the South Fork Basin, all of that flow will exceed the capacity of the plant. The plant is currently rated at 21 million gallons a day. Its current daily flow is about 74% of that capacity now. Once we reach 80%, we'll be in a mandated design for an expansion. If we hit 90%, we have to start construction on an expansion. So the other point to this is the Elledge plant is only at 54%. It's roughly 4.6 miles away from this site. We think that the pump station, if we build that, it's about a $56 million expense. If we build that now, we can balance our treatment capacities and avoid a treatment plant expansion coming up in the near future.
Mr. Taylor.
Just a quick question. The South Fork Basin plant is the newer plant. Is that correct?
The Muddy Creek plant is the new plant.
The
New
Muddy
plant.
Creek plant. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, Elledge is the older plant, Muddy Creek?
Village is the oldest plant that we have.
All right, and Muddy Creek
Is the,
has skyrocketed to 76% of capacity.
it has.
We're already talking about expansion.
But it's not that big. How old is Muddy Creek?
It's 85.
Yeah,
Elledge was built in the 50s.
30 years old.
Okay.
Mr. Montgomery?
And by doing the pump station, how much time on both of those in terms of by them reaching capacity? What does that push a date back to for a real desire to have to do some expansion at either site?
We think we're more than 10 years out from that future expansion, and we would expand at the Elledge plant. We're fairly landlocked at the Muddy Creek site. We've maximized that as much as possible without getting real exotic and real expensive. We're building this pump station. It's going to be about 90 million gallons a day to start out with, but it'll be sized to go up to roughly 140 million, so we can balance, and that's for storm events, but we can balance the flows and expand at Elledge and still be able to pump up to that site.
Go ahead, please.
So the South Fork Critical Improvement Projects, again, it's $115 million over 4 years. It does accelerate the transfer pump station. That's always been in our plan to do. It was a little further out in the window. It was more geared towards when we have to upgrade the plant for future permits that may involve nutrient removal in the 2019 timeframe. To accommodate this large expense sooner, we have delayed other projects. We've scaled back projects just to try and accommodate this expense over this next 4 years. Things like water distribution improvements and sewer rehab in areas of town, we've scaled those back and tried to reprioritize based on more immediate need than preventative need. And then we are also seeking state and federal funding for this project to help offset the debt load that we'll see from it. This is our capital plan, including the budget year for the next 5 years. You see it totals $267,454,145. The current budget year portion of that would be $116,056,385, which the Southport project is basically all of that cost. We have been awarded 2 loans from the Clean Water State Revolving Loan Fund. That's a federal program that they give to states, and we applied through our consultant to receive funding for any of our projects identified by the Wastewater Master Plan, and we did receive the largest award offered by that program of $50 million. It is a 2% interest rate. It's a 20-year term. It also has a 2% closing fee, but it's interest-free financing during the construction period. It's a reimbursement program, so we don't start paying it back until our project is built. And we're also going after federal grant funding.
Mr. Clark?
You've partially answered it. What are the chances of getting money? And if we are getting the $50 million, does that mean we're not actually spending 116?
We are still spending 116, but our financing of that 116 is a little different than standard.
Okay. So we're not having to, we're
Right.
borrowing it just from different places.
Right. Our revenue bond financing, I think, roughly is 3 to 3.5% interest, and we're getting this for 2.
And do you have much hope for any, you mentioned you're going to talk to the federal folks.
Our consultant has a branch that just deals with federal grant funding applications, and they've been very positive. They're looking not just at this project, but they're looking at the system as a whole. Investment in the Piedmont Innovation Corridor and projects like that are very green, generate jobs, that kind of thing. Those are very high on the priority list for federal grant funding. So we're going after all of those funds as we can.
And who is your consultant?
Black and Veatch is the engineering firm, but they have a carve-out consulting arm. It's called TAMCO. They're out of Florida. I was notified today that we did receive another $1 million SRF funding loan, but it's at 0% because it's a green project. We're going to change out some aeration at the Elledge plant that will save power consumption.
We like grants too, not just loans.
We're going after them.
Thank you, sir.
All right, thank you, Mr. Hargrove. Other questions or comments? Again, this is an information item.
I got one.
Mr. McIntosh.
What happens to our sewer system if we lose our stormwater money from the state and we end up shoving a lot of leaves down the stormwater drains? I mean, does our plan take that into account?
Our system is separate. Our sewer and stormwater are separate for the most part. Mr. Hargrove alluded to storm events. That's when you have water coming into the breathing holes of the sanitary system. But our storm system is generally separate from our sewer system.
And if I might add, if we lose that, then the water gets into the creek a different way. It floods the creek. That's where we get the I&I in our collection system.
Other questions, comments? Thank you very much.
Sure.
I'll have to try to think of something to prolong the meeting. I'm getting
Maybe you
getting bad looks from staff. Seriously, are there any other items to come before the committee today, Mr. Montgomery?
It's just comment, and I'll get with staff at appropriate time, but have requests from individuals who are in here right off of Patterson Avenue for potential street closure for area there, right in front of Bethesda Center and the area that's in front of the water tower that's there, particularly some issues with individuals that, from the Bethesda Center standpoint, are not associated with the homeless shelter, but cause some issues there, in particular looking at how we can control that walking traffic through there. And so that's something that I'd like to have some additional conversation with.
All right. Mr. Clark?
Two things. I know that you folks have been meeting with the various council members on the particular streets and sidewalks that are going to be in the bond package, and you'll be coming back to us shortly with revised maps and things. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Secondly, this is something I have brought up at the budget meeting. It's really more appropriate for here, but has to do with increasing our recycling of the C&D landfill. Now, I do know with the recession, the amount of construction material being generated has dropped dramatically because people aren't building as much, and therefore the amount of material going into that landfill has dropped. But there has been built since then a private organization that does recycle C&D. I did have the opportunity, along with Mr. Turner, several years ago to visit a C&D recycling center. At the same time, we visited a single source recycling center like we have now out in your ward, I believe. And it just seemed like to me, and I don't have any specific suggestions other than maybe we sit down with some folks and say, listen, can we recycle more of our stream there? Again, based on my one experience, a lot of what can be recycled are wood, metal, a lot of the concrete, bricks, stuff like that, cement can be pulverized and turned back into gravel, things of that sort, and some metals as well that get recycled.
Why don't we schedule a report and discussion on that item for a future committee meeting?
Yeah. It doesn't have to be next month, just at some point. I think it'd be nice.
Very good. Mr. Montgomery?
And it is one thing, and I don't know how they currently do something with that, but in Durham, there is a location. I was just trying to find it, and I think it's the reuse warehouse, not to be confused with the Habitats Restore program they have, but it's something different that they have there that's specifically, if my understanding, connected with the construction and building materials, where on site in those locations they have additional opportunities where they do recycling, but then also a selling of materials that's there that brings in additional revenue. So when looking at that, if you all can research that as a part of that conversation.
Certainly.
Anything else?
I guess Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Traylor?
I just want to take a quick moment, excuse me, I recognize Ms. Tony McCullough, and she doesn't want me to do this, but I'm going to do it anyway. Transportation Director, she has taken on 3 new interns from Winston-Salem State University in the Department of Transportation. One of those interns is here today to take a look at how we do business from a public works perspective. Mr. Muhammadu Tayaru.
No, welcome.
Thank you for coming.
Very good. All right. If there's nothing else, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much, and we are adjourned.
Yeah.